And welcome everybody to God's Views on Political News. So glad that you could join us today. Bill, how are you this great day?
I'll tell you after we get off.
Bill's having another great day. Well, I'm sure you're going to get happy
I'm
as we
here.
go through these topics.
I'm here. Yes, yes. I know the topics today are just going to lower my blood pressure and make me feel good about the future, I'm sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now I want to say hello to people coming in. Alan, just Karma, Linda, Sue is here, Robin, hello everybody. Janice, Linda, Norman, good to see everybody. Thank you for being here and thank you for your comments and your questions that we're going to get today. And I want to start out, Bill. This is what's let's start out making really happy.
Okay.
We're going to talk about Ilhan Omar and the other. I call them the Pod Squad members because they're, four peas in a pod. So I figure Pod Squad instead of just Squad is the best name for them.
Okay, we'll go with that one.
So we're going to talk with them. Okay, so before we get started, what we're going to do, we're going to have. Just to say hello to a couple more people. Jim coming in, Jim Fleming, shalom to you. Diane, hello from Indiana. Rosie, Brenda, Liz, good to see everybody here today. Brandon has got two short clips for us to watch, and then we'll discuss what took place yesterday. So let's first see a film from Ayanna Presley, one of the members of the squad.
Okay.
If you could.
From our colleagues to our neighbors, we are grateful for your solidarity, your encouragement, and your support in the face of the most recent xenophobic, bigoted remarks from the occupant of our White House. I will always refer to him as the occupant, as he is only occupying space. He does not embody the grace, the empathy, the compassion, the integrity that office requires and that the American people deserve.
I believe this is a pivotal moment in our country. The eyes of history is watching us. Right now, the president is carrying out mass deportation raids across this country in each one of our districts. Right now, the president is committing human rights abuses at the border, keeping children in cages, and having human beings drinking out of toilets.
Okay, so I actually did watch the whole thing, and those were the only things I could stomach for this show. I didn't want to, replay the whole thing, but let's start out with Ayanna Presley, a congresswoman who is disrespecting the office of the President of the United States of America. Your thoughts, Bill?
Well, she's obviously does not consider him the President of the United States by using terminology, the occupant of the Oval Office. Just grouping them all together, I mean, these people are anti-American, they're anti-Israel. And to me, that translates, and particularly when it comes to God's purposes for Israel, that translates as probably anti-God. We know that some of them are of a religion that refers to someone else as God, and which I do not believe is the same God of the Bible. So that's what we're really looking at here, as far as I'm concerned. And that's not to say that everyone outside of that squad, as you call them, or pod squad, as you call them, is God-fearing necessarily, but these people are the tip of the spear where lawlessness and godlessness is concerned as it operates in the halls of Congress. So it is maddening, it is disturbing, it is, I can think of a lot of other words that probably wouldn't sound nice, but I'm trying to keep my sanctification in check here, so.
And it's very difficult. And watching Ilhan Omar spew out lies, saying that
I know.
Children are in cages, which is, we know that was under the Obama administration. These children are not in cages at the detention centers today. And also saying things like people are drinking out of toilets, which we know is not true. That's already been proven as well. But she gets up there and lies again just keeps asserting the lies one time after the other. Um,
Well, it's apples and oranges perhaps, but in my mind, it's connected. It's like some of the people in radical Islam, some of the people that are in the Palestinian Authority. They keep just regurgitating these same old lines and lies to play to the ignorant of the world's masses. And the people here are doing the same thing. They're speaking to their districts and beyond, to people who A, are ignorant of the facts, or B, don't care what the facts are. They've already made up their mind how they feel about some things, and they're just going to stoke the fires of controversy, contention, rebellion, and eventually civil war.
and isn't that exactly what they want, though,
Absolutely.
Bill? I mean,
Absolutely.
they really do that.
There's no
Now,
doubt in my mind.
Jim said he agrees with you, brother, and Rosie Beth said it sounded demonic to her. And I will have to say, I agree with you, Rosie Beth. I was thinking that yesterday when I was watching those people and listening to them. I felt a very strong demonic presence. And I know that'll make me a racist, because if I disagree with anything they say, I'm a racist.
Well, if standing up for sovereign borders and standing up for the rule of law and believing that America should not be what AOC and these other people wish to see it to become, and I would include Barack Obama in that as well. Okay, if that's what a racist is, I don't care. Call me a racist. I know who I am. I know what I am. And I'm certainly not speaking for the president, but it seems to me that he knows who he is and what he believes and what he intends to do. And I'm glad that he's not someone who is easily swayed by such viciousness as this, because I have to tell you, a lot of politicians would buckle at this point, and concede and play nice. I don't want to mention any names, Mitt Romney, but anyway, just.
What a disappointment. Yes, Mitt Romney. Now, Brenda Liz said they are just embarrassing themselves. And Rosie
I don't
Beth
think
said
they are. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I don't think they are embarrassed. I don't think they can be embarrassed at this point. They're that hard-hearted.
Yeah, they really are. But they are embarrassing themselves by what they're saying. They don't realize they're embarrassing themselves, and they're not embarrassed by what they say, because they think what they say is absolutely, positively the truth and what the American people want as well. Now, Jim said if you drive a Ford pickup truck, you're probably a racist. He's joking.
Well, I'm looking for a Ford pickup.
There you go.
FYI.
That it was Obama's plan to bring in immigrants to populate areas that would then vote their ethnicities into office. He used our democratic process against us. I wonder why he did that. That wasn't planned, I'm sure. And Just Karma said these has-beens need to stop talking. People like Mittens Romney, she said. And Robin said they don't know Americans, because Americans are not for them. Now, let's talk about what President Trump did say. Let me read the tweet, and I don't know if Brandon has that tweet to put up or not, but I'll read it to you. This is what started everything. So interesting to see progressive Democrat congresswomen who originally came from countries whose governments are a complete and total catastrophe, the worst, most corrupt and inept anywhere in the world, if they even have a functioning government at all, now loudly and viciously telling the people of the United States, the greatest and most powerful nation on earth, how our government is to be run. Why don't they go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came? They come back and show us how. Then come back and show us how it is done. These places need your help badly. You can't leave fast enough. I'm sure that Nancy Pelosi would be very happy to quickly work out free travel arrangements for you. And because he said that, and because only one of the mod squad comes from outside of the country, all of a sudden he's a racist. And because he disagrees with what they say, because they're women of color and he's white, then automatically he's a racist. The word here is the Saul Alinsky word here is, if you do not agree with a person of color, then you are a racist. That's the new definition of racism in our country.
Well, I mean, everything's racism at this point, And
right.
in fact, I'm seeing several people comment on all of this, the last several days, and the consensus seems to be on what I would consider to be the reasonable side, is that the reason that racism or the race card is played is because they have no substantive argument to make. They have no facts to combat you with in this argument, so they just call everything as racist. It gets old. I think that with a lot of people, and of all colors, by the way, this whole racism charge is growing old. I think people are beginning to tire of it. And obviously not everybody, but I think a lot of people are. As far as the tweet itself, it seems to me, I was reading all the backlash and everything. It seems to me that obviously when Trump was writing this or tweeting this, that he had Omar in mind when he said this. But even though the others were born in the United States, they don't speak as Americans. Rashida Tlaib speaks more as a Palestinian than she does as an American. Presley, I don't know what her, I won't even go there. AOC, she speaks as a Marxist, so that's what she is advocating. And so that's what they identify with. They identify with these other nations. They identify with these other cultures. They identify with these other mindsets and philosophies. So, it's like if I say I'm a this, I'm a that, aren't I? If I'm saying I'm a Palestinian or I'm advocating for Palestine and the Palestinian cause, then, why would I not consider you to be saying I'm a Palestinian? Or you understand what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah.
So the sentiment, the point that he was trying to make, I think he was spot on. Now, if you're going to look at it from a political point of view, then he put his foot in his mouth. But we've been told all along, Trump's not a politician. He's not speaking as a politician. He doesn't have to do this. He's doing a lot. He's saying a lot of things that a lot of people want to say, and he has the platform to do it. So all of that is to say, I don't find it racist, and politically, it was a mistake if you're going to look at it from political posturing. But what we've also seen from Trump from the get-go, we'll talk about what a political mistake he made today, and then we'll talk 3 months later about, well, as it turns out, he was right.
Yeah.
That seems to be the pattern, So I don't really have any issues with what Trump said from here's what is going on, here is what these people are doing, the sentiment that he expressed. I kind of agree. If you don't like it here so much, why are you here? You want to transform it into something else. So why don't you go to the Palestinian Authority and, why don't you go back to Somalia? Why don't you go back to these places that you find it to be so pristine and something to be attained? I don't blame him at all for saying that. All right, I ran around Mount Sinai a few times, but hopefully you got my point here.
Well, but here's the thing. You have this woman, Ilhan Omar, who complains, about this country every time she opens her mouth. And yet, she's always talking about this country needs, I want full equality in this country. Let me tell you something. Let me ask this question to her directly. How many people in this country do you know of that came in here and was a refugee and now is an elected congresswoman? You can't get more equal than that, Bill.
Well, and too, in the space of time, it's it's considerably small if you think about it. And of course, how many people can allegedly marry somebody they're related to skirt around immigration laws, and there's certain tax issues that still haven't been resolved, as far as I know, and still remain in Congress, and then spout off all these other things. So as far as the equality issue, I want equal justice under the law. I'm all for that. But this whole idea that everybody's the same and everybody ought to get the same and everybody ought to be the same, isn't that communism? Isn't that Marxism? Isn't that socialism? That certainly isn't the philosophy that founded this nation. And by the way, that's not a biblical philosophy either.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she hasn't had it so bad, I guess is my point. There aren't many people that have been able to rise up and be a congresswoman. And yet she complains about this country almost every time she opens her mouth. And she's always saying people are attacking her because they think she's anti-American. Well, they think it's just like you said, Bill. They think she's anti-American because every word out of her mouth is anti-American. So if you don't want to be seen that way, perhaps you shouldn't talk that way, and then people won't assume or think that you are. But here's another thing that I look at this and I go, well, is she anti-American or whatever? Because she and Tlaib are going to be speaking next week alongside of a woman named Zahar Billoo, Billoo, who's repeatedly called Israel a terrorist state, and has said from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, which means basically eliminate Israel.
Well, like I said at the very beginning, you got people like Rashida Tlaib who identify, and I'm basing this on what she says, what she argues for, what she advocates. She doesn't advocate for American values, it doesn't seem to me. She's always advocating for anti-Israel positions, which a lot of people in the Palestinian Authority are all for that. So she's identifying by her words, her actions, her deeds. That's how she's identifying. So why wouldn't I consider her to be such? And oh, by the way, as far as disrespecting an office, to use the language that this woman uses not only is offensive, period, but she's a woman on top of that, and she's a so-called congresswoman. So none of these women have any moral standing to point a finger at anybody and say that they are disrespecting any kind of office, because the fact that, well, I'm going to restrain myself right there. You get the point. But I want to add this, and I just want to make sure that everybody knows this. This is kind of broadening the conversation just a moment, and I don't want to take it off in a different direction, at least not yet. But I do think this is a good place to point out that the word Palestine is, we read about the Philistines in the Bible, and this is where the idea of Palestine, or that word Palestine, comes from. And the reality is that the Hebrew phrase is could actually be translated as invader. In other words, the Philistines were not indigenous to the Levant, the area there in Mesopotamia and Israel. And they came from other areas. They came from Greek islands and places in the Mediterranean, but they were considered to be invaders. That's why they were called Philistim, or Philistines, and that's where Palestine comes from. So if you want to get real technical about it, Palestine is equivalent to people who have invaded another country and are trying to take over that country. And so where Rashida Tlaib is concerned, we've got one of those, that mentality, an invasive mentality inside the White House. It's prevalent in AOC, in Omar, and some of these others. It is an invasive mentality that, it seems at least on the surface, is beginning to control the direction of the Democratic Party, is beginning to sway Pelosi and others to not rock the boat too much and tick off, a lot of these other people out that are affiliated with the Democratic Party. It is an invasive mentality that, if it goes unchecked, the things that go on in Israel every day will be going on in this country every day.
Well, and maybe that explains a lot about why they are so against, having the borders be protected, and why they want open borders. Maybe that, this is historically what they believe in, and as you said in your definition. Now, Jim said there are hordes of locusts blown in on an east wind. Wanda says, old saying, if the shoe fits. Linda says, may God sort it out. And Jim said, future proves the past. Brenda Liz said, he always gets vindicated, always, meaning President Trump. Let's see, Jonathan said they're trying to destroy America. They are communists. Denora Hodges says these women are extreme feminists. America as a whole do not hate men. America will see after the 2020 elections. Rosie Beth said, as Bill said, they are playing to the ignorant masses. And Linda says our definitions are so different. Karen Hoover Schumacher said, I agree, Bill, she is anti-American. Brenda Liz says Jezebel spirits, and if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, it probably is a duck, according to Rosie. And Jonisia Hyde said, out of the heart, the mouth speaks. Lori said the sad part of the racism card constantly being played is that people start to just tune out for a while. It becomes just noise. Consequently, real racism may not be listened to because people start to ignore the whole topic. And let's see, other people said yes, Bill's volume. Oh, volume for Bill is low.
I just raised my mic up some, so
Perfect.
so
And then,
let's see if that's any better, y'all.
Linda said, so again, we find ourselves confronted with Philistines. Jonathan said the left is giving in and letting someone else think for them. You know, one of the things that we're seeing too, what people have said about President Trump and what he said yesterday, it is really forcing Nancy Pelosi to have to agree with the people that are really trying to get rid of Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah. So then we could argue that politically speaking, that what Trump did was
a very good thing.
Very good thing. It just depends on how you look at it and how long you've been living inside the Beltway, I guess. But
anyway. Well, and Sue said, how can the four spout off the things they do and the Democrats think it's okay? A lot of the young people are for them. They don't even have any real idea about what the four are really trying to do, which is destroying America. And they don't understand that. You know, a lot of the young people who are looking at it are thinking Trump's a racist. That's all they've heard. That's all they believe because that's what mainstream media has said. They listen to, we're going to give you free stuff, free, plus a free education through college. I wish somebody had given that to me. Not really, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so when you hear that, you're thinking, well, that sounds good, because a lot of these people aren't even working yet. They don't understand that once you start working and making your own money, you don't want to give it away to people who are sitting on their butts and doing nothing.
Well, amen to that. You know, you're baiting me here by saying stuff like that. And I'm really trying to curb my tongue today. I have absolutely no respect for people who don't want to work. Now, that doesn't apply to people who can't, okay? I'm talking about people who can but won't. And they're always looking at the other guy, what he has, and they don't want to have the responsibility. You know, they don't want to, they don't want to have to go through what the other guy went through to get there. And by the way, even though he started out a lot better than you and I did, Trump's, you know, one of those people that got in and he turned what he had into something else. So there's always been that mentality. You've got something I want. And I'm going to argue that this mentality is introduced in the garden. Because when the serpent had that conversation with the woman, you know, didn't God say that you could freely eat of all the trees of the garden? Well, we can eat of all the trees of the garden except this one here. We're not supposed to touch it or we die. And he said, oh, you're not going to die. It's just that, and I'm going to paraphrase it, it's just that God doesn't want you to know everything he knows. And he's got something he doesn't want you to have. And so you're entitled to that. You're entitled to take and have what he has, the knowledge of good and evil, and you should be able to do it freely. So that's the sell. You know, he has something that you deserve. He doesn't want you to have what you deserve. And this is propagated, and it's been propagated through Marxism, socialism, communism, you know, all of these different isms. And these are the people, the four main people right now who are in our country anyway, who are the voice and the mouthpiece for this sorry mentality.
Well, I mean, it's pretty amazing to watch them. And what it all boils down to is that these women, these four congresswomen, are going to be trying to be the center of attention because they're going to go out. Yesterday, you know, that news conference, you know, Nancy Pelosi did not give her blessing for that news conference. These four went out and decided, we're going to do this. Now is our time. Now is our time to come in here and do what we want. Let's try to get rid of the Democrat Party, the rhinos, or not the rhinos, but the ones in the Democrat Party who are the old school people. Yeah. Let's try to get rid of them. And at the same time, we will push forward our socialist, communist agenda to the United States. That's exactly what they did.
Yeah, I'd like to be a fly on the wall, you know, up there and seeing what Nancy has to really say about all of this. And somebody in the comments was just pointing out they believe that Trump is dividing, or these four women, excuse me, are dividing the Democratic Party. I hope they are.
Yeah.
I do. I really hope they are. Now, what the end result might turn out to be, obviously we don't know, but they do seem to be causing these fissures and these divides in the Democratic Party. And so I'll take this opportunity to say this again. I have been teaching, or not teaching, but I've been sharing with people that I believe that what Trump is doing, where the Democratic Party is concerned, and particularly the radicals within the Democratic Party, is he's been exposing their true nature. He's been exposing what they're really all about. Absolutely. They've kind of gone under the radar for a while, but he has made them so angry, and he has just triggered them so that they're just spouting off at the mouth and saying what they really believe. So in that respect, I have believed for a while, and I've just written an article about this, where I believe that God is using Trump to do to the progressives and the radicals in this nation what he uses Jerusalem to do to the nations, and that is to be a cup of trembling. He is causing them to lose their minds. Yeah. And, so I just see this as a continuation of that. Now, and that is not to say that, that Trump is all-knowing, all-powerful, all these kinds of things. I'm just saying that God is using the man to trigger this and to bring this to light, so that if there was ever any doubt in our minds what these people are really all about, it should be crystal at this point.
Now, Jim is saying Trump is exposing these demons for who they really are. And part of the reason they hate President Trump, according to Rosie Beth, is because he can't be bought. He worked his tail off, which is against their beliefs. And I think that is true. They have so much hate, Karen said, or rather they have false narratives as well, Rosie was saying. And doesn't the Bible say, throw shall not covet? This is major coveting.
Thou shalt not covet,
thou shalt not, yeah, throw, yeah. Thou shalt not covet. This is major coveting. I don't know. I tell you, Bill, it is more and more, as we can see, it's a spiritual battle. I mean, it totally is a spiritual battle. And you have Ilhan Omar yesterday calling on the impeachment. She says, well, I haven't said anything about impeachment before, but I'm saying it now. We need to impeach him. Why? Because you think he's a racist? Because you think that he disagrees with your opinion, and therefore you should impeach him? And they like to bring out the fact, he doesn't follow the Constitution. How does he not follow the Constitution? Well, it's laughable. It is laughable.
Well, I mean, she's calling for impeachment based on the fact that she thinks he's a racist is obvious evidence that she has no idea what's in the Constitution. She doesn't know what is required, what the criteria is for impeachment if she wants to impeach him because she thinks he's a racist. So it's just like, here's the pot calling the kettle black. Oh, I said a bad word.
Yeah. Such a racist.
I'm such a racist. I use the word black. Anyway, it's ridiculous. But the scary part is this. There are so many 20-somethings out there.
Yes.
Maybe even 30-somethings out there.
Mm-hmm.
God help us if there are 40-somethings out there who believe this and who are ignorant of all these other facts, but buy into all of this nonsense and then go and, try to blow up stuff. It's coming to that.
Wanda says, can't tell you both how much I appreciate what you do here. Thank you. Thank you, Wanda, for being here. We totally appreciate your support as well. Karen said it's a sad attempt of a hostile takeover, which it is. I agree with you, Karen. Karma. Obama didn't follow the Constitution at all, Robin said. And Distant Crowd 240 said they are destroying family values. And Bill, I want to get back to a little bit a moment ago what you said about President Trump and how he's a trembling, like, Jerusalem is and all that. One of the things that President Trump has done with progressives is something that we have not seen since progressives began to try to infiltrate and did infiltrate and are infiltrating our public school system.
Yeah.
There's been nobody like President Trump to come out and speak against progressivism, because up until now, it was not PC to do that. Right. Even. So, and he is saying, we've got to do something different. I am going to do something different, and I'm going to call these people out. And that's exactly what he did. He's exposing them the progressives for who they are, for the people who do not believe in biblical principles, who do not believe in the family, who do not believe in other things that most Americans believe in, who are not really the people, the Democrat Party, because the people in the Democrat Party, they don't know what happened to their party for the most part. And they're now coming over to the Republican Party because their party, the Democrat Party, left them a long time ago.
Yeah, well, Ronald Reagan said that many, many years ago, that he didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left him. And that was, 35 years ago.
Yeah.
So, it's...
Can you imagine what he'd think today?
Exactly, exactly. Well, for me, just closer to home, for a frame of reference, there were times my dad voted for a Democrat. I remember back in the 60s and early 70s that he voted for, not across the board. He wasn't a Democrat. He was always an independent. But I remember there were certain candidates that were in the Democratic Party that he voted for. So there is absolutely no way on God's green earth that today my dad, were he alive, would vote for anybody associated with the Democratic Party, and he'd probably have plenty of problems with the Republican Party, let me tell you. Which brings me to this point. One of the things that I hope Donald Trump is doing is demonstrating to Republicans / conservatives, whatever you want to call them, because it's not necessarily one and the same. I hope that he is demonstrating to them that they shouldn't really listen to their handlers as much as they have over the last several decades, and not saying things that need to be said, not taking stands and sticking to them because they're so afraid that they're going to offend somebody and lose votes. What he's demonstrating is that if you'll speak, and even if we have to kind of wince a little bit when you speak because it might be a little too rough around the edges, but if you speak to the point and it's true and it's accurate and it's not hyperbole and it's not all these other things that everyone else seems to excel in, that there are people out there that are going to stand behind you on that, and they're going to gravitate towards you because you're saying the things they wish they could say. You're doing the things they wish they could do. And I believe this with all my heart, Susan. There are more of us than there are of them. And the fact that they are attacking fundamental biblical principles upon which this nation was founded, and that they're doing it so viciously, is evidence that there are more of us than there are of them. And the reason I say that is because every time someone rose up in the Bible with the determination to wipe out God's people, it's almost always prefaced by a statement that goes something like this: they are more, speaking of God's people, they are more and mightier than we. And that is the impetus for their attacks. So all of that is to say that I hope and I pray that one of the things that Donald Trump has done is to show those Republicans, conservatives if they are, that it's okay to speak up. And there'll be people who get offended, but you're going to have the backbone to stand or to withstand that and lead this country in the right direction, or it's lost.
Or it's lost. Now, Robin said Trump is trying to reverse the damage done by Obama by following the Constitution. Karen said it's really sad how the young people believe this terrible stuff. They're calling people of color that don't agree with them racist is absurd, Karma said. And Robin said, I'm so grateful God is using Trump to expose them. God is using Trump as a vessel to bring the darkness to light, Karma said. Democratic Party is a house divided, Linda's asking, and we've just said we believe so. Thank you for this viewpoint, not hearing it anywhere else, Jason Osler said. Thank you, Jason, for being here and saying that. Daniel said, I've never voted Democrat. And God bless you, Susan. Vendall said, thank you, Vendall. Hello, Bill from Oklahoma. And other people are saying, very true. Amen. Amen is what we're saying. I think that obviously that we know that it is past time for us to stand up and start speaking. We can't go back in the darkness. We can't hide. We can't not speak up because we're afraid that somebody's going to call you a racist. Just know, prepare yourself that if you speak, someone will call you a racist. Yeah. That way you won't be shocked.
I'm already resigned to that in many people's mind, I'm a racist, I'm a bigot, I'm a this, I'm a that, because I have an opinion and I will state it. and I don't agree with this nonsense that's going on. So you may as well get used to that. By the way, and I'm certainly not putting myself in the company of the Messiah, other than I'm in his body, but they called him a wine bibber. They accused him of being illegitimate, as you know, going back to the whole Joseph and Mary thing. They made all these accusations. They said he was a blasphemer. They did all these things. So, you know, we're in good company if we're standing for what is true, what is pure, what is holy, what is right. That is what the adversary is going to come at us with. Accusations. He is the accuser of the brethren. And I realize that, again, we're talking apples and oranges in some ways here, but then again, we're not. Because if we are truly in a spiritual battle for the soul and the life of this nation, and I believe we are, then it is a battle that cannot be waged through temporal means, at least not exclusively. It has to be a spiritual war, and therefore we are going to be accused by our adversaries of being this, that, and the other. It's just part of it. And if that's going to cause you to melt, then you need to move to the back of the line and let somebody up front that's going to be able to withstand these fiery darts. Now, I also want to add this, and then I'll hush. Again, that is not to say that we just have to be thick-skinned and that's going to get us through what's going on. No, we have to have that shield of faith, and we need to have the sword of the Spirit in our hand.
The full armor of God.
Right.
Now, Danielle said Republicans need to grow fortitude. And Linda said, can you imagine the backlash if Republican squads spoke up for traditional values? And, you know, I'm thinking, Linda, that's not such a bad idea. I like that idea, and I may do something with that. John is saying, I agree, God's got our backs, but we must have the courage and the boldness to stand up for God's work. Vandal said, my parents are Kennedy Democrats. They both are 88, and Vandal's never voted Democrat. I've been called worse in my life, Karma said, and then just racist. And Jimmy said, Bill, will the new church ready? Well, we'll talk about that.
Well, maybe talk about that toward the end. But
yeah. And then Darlene said they use fear a lot and try to transfer that over onto others, especially minority groups. Robin said, I do care what they call me. I don't care. I know my identity, and that's very good. Greg Shipman said we should all go back to Yah's word. And then John said, I left the Democratic Party 2 years ago. I believe in nothing they do. Satan controls their agenda. It's a spiritual battle. John Evelyn and Gonzalez, welcome to the Republican Party. Cheryl said, she was answering something else. Tim said they use nothing but fear as they stand for nothing good. And I think it's good to remember that. You know, what was also good this morning was the Republicans came out and said that to the squad, in response to the squad, this is nothing about your race, nothing about your gender, nothing about your religion. This is us disagreeing with the things that you say and do that in essence, don't benefit America.
Yeah. Well, and they're not going to debate on those points, though. They're going to rail these accusations because that finds an audience out there that responds to that, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And so, no, they're not going to speak about the issues. I mean, and again, I don't want to take it off in a direction you're not ready to go yet. But just watching the exchange between AOC and the former head of ICE, Holman. It was just so blatantly obvious that this woman does not deal in facts and in reality. She lives in a fantasy land, but in her mind, it's the real world. It's just unbelievable. But because they deal in fantasy or their ideals of what things should be, which aren't biblically sound, which aren't American, they're going to combat people with these diatribes and these accusations. Nothing substantive.
Yeah, now Dennis said the liberal media are just media knights, and Vandal said they can tell me whatever they like. I don't care. I'm a king's kid. And then Rosie Beth said she has a mind when you were talking about AOC. And then Linda said don't raise Cain by hating. I think that this is where we go on and talking about the border. But before we get there, I want to say that after this squad meeting yesterday, media went up to. I saw 3 out of the 4, and I think I maybe briefly saw the 4th one. All 4 of them were asked, "Will you condemn the alleged Antifa uh, fighter who tried to attack the ICE detention center and tried to bomb the ICE detention center in Washington over the weekend? Will you condemn it?" Not a single one of those congresswomen condemned the violence in Washington state by the alleged Antifa person who wrote the manifesto.
Yeah, I noticed that. Why would they? This is really kind of what they're seeding here. This is they're sowing the seeds of rebellion and civil war.
Yes.
I know what Marx has to say. I know how Lenin interpreted Marx. I know what it leads to. They speak to the revolutionaries, they incite the crowd, and eventually they step back and watch everyone else do their dirty work for them. That's what this is all about. So that's exactly what they're doing. They know what they're doing, and then you've got someone who is, in his manifesto, as they like to call it, which I think that was what Marx called his. But anyway, he's using the same language that Ocasio-Cortez is using when it comes to these immigration detention centers. So they know what they're doing. And this is why I said what I did earlier. They're inciting civil war, and eventually people are going to start blowing things up. And so here we have a guy that I didn't actually see any confirmation on what he was armed with, but I think he successfully firebombed a couple of buildings or in vehicles and things like this, and was carrying a weapon. I don't think it's even an allegation anymore that he's part of Antifa. I think that's been proven beyond any doubt that he was.
They've accepted him. Yes,
yeah,
they've claimed him.
And yeah, as a matter of fact, they're online. If you have the stomach for it, you go read some of these 20-somethings and their tweets and the different things they're saying. They regard him as a martyr for their cause. So what is their cause? It's revolution. That's what we're dealing with.
Absolutely. Darlene was talking about it's a result of indoctrination. Happy Family says, I hope Trump is opening the eyes of the Christians who voted for Obama and wouldn't vote for Trump. 10 is 3 said they couldn't make it any clearer that they condoned what happened because of the fact that they would not condemn it. And Karma said they're backing up Antifa, even funding them. Lennon did the same thing, Danielle said. And Distant Crowd said, I'm more concerned that Antifa is allowed to operate terrorism, plain and simple. And I think that's one of the things that people are hoping that President Trump will do, would be to classify them as a terrorist group. Now, I want to briefly tell you, I don't know if you remember Sean King, who is one of the Black Lives Matter leaders.
Who's what?
He says he's not.
Oh, that's right. He identifies
otherwise.
Right. I got
yes.
it. Yeah.
So he basically glorified the Washington Antifa bomber, I'll call him, in his tweets. Part of his tweets, he said, and listen, it's exactly what you're talking about in the left, seemingly the liberal left, the progressive left, trying to get us into civil war. He said he called this Antifa man the first martyr attempting to liberate imprisoned refugees at the for-profit detention center. He said, this is what our country has come to. He called his manifesto a beautiful, mindful, and devastating letter. He says his actions will be called terrorism and crazy, but neither is true, because this man's mind was very clear. And Sean called for shutting down of all of the camps, as he called them.
You know, what I found so very interesting about this guy, and this speaks to historical parallels, not necessarily someone's motivation, but he venerated, and that's my word, John Brown. And for those of you who don't remember who John Brown was a man who in the late 1850s led a raid against an armory in Harper's Ferry, at that point, Virginia, and basically sowed the seeds of the American Civil War. Now, his motivation was slavery, wanting to see the slaves freed. And by the way, I don't see these two issues as one and the same. What these so-called Antifa people are, wanting to free these refugees, I do not see it as being the same thing as, the slavery issue back in the 1800s. But my point is that he saw John Brown as someone to be emulated. And the fact that John Brown and his subsequent hanging incited a lot of the radicals in the North, this is actually part of what led to the American Civil War. My point is, we're following an historical parallel here. It's not to equate the two issues, slavery and immigration. That's not what I'm addressing. I'm addressing the very interesting components of the things that are happening right now as it relates to historical parallels. So, back to what we said earlier. These people are inciting violence. They're inciting revolution. That was that's their motivation, revolution.
That's motivation.
I find it very interesting, too, that one of the words for violence in Hebrew is the word Hamas. Of course, Hamas is a Islamic resistance movement that is based in the Gaza. Of course, there's Rashida Tlaib, who is advocating for these people. You've got all these other people, AOC, that advocate for anti-Israel positions, pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas. You've got these people who are aligning themselves with this woman, you called her name, I don't remember what it was right now, who's been very vocal about taking anti-Israel positions and ending the occupation from the river to the sea, which means let's get rid of Israel. So what's the common denominator in all of this? It's violence. It's revolution. This is what's standing right in front of us. And yet, so many in the media are wanting to condemn the president for quote-unquote racist comments. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that woman was Zahra Billoo, Billoo, that you were just mentioning, the one who anti-Israel remarks and all that. Let's see. You have liberal mayors giving stand-down orders to the civil unrest and violence, and we're moving into that category now and talking about the border and the raids and all that happened at the border. 57 student wants to know where I'm located in Southern California. They don't teach that in schools anymore. So much video out there showing Antifa not being arrested while committing crimes. Police walk away. That's another problem. We have to enforce our laws. Can these people be turned away at the border? No entry points, no refuge centers. Let's see. Yes, they're hoping to validate violence as it relates to conservatives. They're attempting to make it acceptable by mischaracterizing groups of people, Darlene said. Well, and if you call people who talk against, who don't like your point of view and are against it, if you continually call them racist, then you are inciting people to be violent against people, because they're going to say, well, you're a racist. I mean, without even you opening your mouth, you've already been condemned. Now, one of the things, that I find interesting, Bill, and we saw starting today, there is the Trump administration, and I know it's going to be immediately challenged, is the first country rule. And that is that everybody coming into this country is going to have to go, whatever country they come to first, they're going to have to seek asylum there. And there are a few exceptions that will get you to the United States. If you're denied asylum, that would be one of the reasons that they would continue you on to the United States. But they're stopping people from coming in here because we're overwhelmed. We're overwhelmed at the border. We have people like AOC and the other people in the squad really just lying to the American public about what's going on at the border, and we need to stop it some way. So this is going into effect today, like I said, and you just know that I think the ACLU has already come out and said we're going to challenge it.
Well, no surprise there. They have a long history of challenging things that make sense, but that's another issue. I feel that there's probably going to be some judge somewhere that's going to try to step in, and I don't know how they get away with it, make themselves, the all-knowing, all-powerful Oz that can determine, the lives of 350 million people. Yeah. But to Trump's credit, he keeps coming out. He finds another way to come at the issue. There's some things he's kind of backed off of personally. I wish he would not have, but that's me. But I also am willing to give the man the benefit of the doubt, and perhaps he's got another angle that he's working to try to make this work. That seems to be his methodology. You know, okay, you're going to put a roadblock up here. I'm going to find another way to get around the roadblock. So I'm kind of waiting to see how this is all going to pan out. I hope that it's successful and that it stands.
Yeah, I do too. Now, Darlene was saying that was our asylum law to begin with. It was never enforced, and it really was not our asylum law. You did hear about the first country rule, but what happened was the first country rule was you have to come to a safe country, one that has been designated by the United States as a safe country, meaning if you go there, they're going to talk to you about asylum. They're not going to send you back. We were hoping to get that designation with Mexico. We never did. So we didn't actually have that in effect. And this doesn't require the country to be safe, but it does say that if it's not safe, we'll bring you on to the United States and you can ask for asylum there. So it doesn't really matter. But you know, this is something that took place over a couple days ago with Tom Homan talking to one of the congressmen, Garcia, who, you know, you can tell this is a person who does not want to protect our borders, meaning Garcia, does not want to protect our borders, wants people come in here regardless of who they are and just have open borders. And he all but calls Homan a racist, a xenophobe, this, that, whatever you can think of. But let's roll this clip and look at that.
Mr. Homan, do you understand that the consequences of separation of many children will be lifelong trauma and carried across generations? Have we not learned from the internment of Japanese Americans? Mr. Homan, I'm a father. Do you have children? How can you possibly allow this to happen under your watch? Do you not care? Is it because these children don't look like children that are around you? I don't get it. Have you ever held a deceased child in your arms?
First of all, your comments are disgusting. I've served my country.
I've served my
country for 34 years.
I find your comments disgusting as well.
I've served my country for 34 years. And yes, I held a 5-year-old boy in my arms in back of that tractor trailer. I knelt down beside him and said a prayer for him because I knew what his last 30 minutes of his life were like. And I had a 5-year-old son at the time. What I've been trying to do my 34 years serving my nation is to save lives. So for you to sit there and insult my integrity and my love for my country and for children, that's why this whole thing needs to be fixed. And you're
I bet you if he had not been sitting in that particular chamber, he'd have been saying, "Why don't we take this outside?" But here's, no, in all seriousness, here's what you notice about that. Here's what I notice about that exchange. The congressman is trying to sound passionate as he's reading from a piece of paper.
Yeah, that somebody wrote for him, no doubt.
Right. Well, that I don't know, but he's reading from a piece of paper, trying to sound passionate. Where Mr. Homan is concerned, no teleprompter, no piece of paper, that's passion. And I don't know how everyone else sees this, but I can listen to someone that I may disagree with if they're speaking with passion, because I know that's what's in their heart. You know, I may vehemently disagree with them, but I respect the fact that they're speaking with passion. But you know, someone who's speaking from prepared statements and trying to sound, you know, whatever his goal was there, I don't know. But it came off as just snarky and just very, what's the word I'm looking for?
Contrived.
Well, that too, but just, you know, he belittled himself as far as I'm concerned. And that he's trying to sound like he's made a point here and I gotcha, but he's reading it from a piece of paper and not very well, I might add.
Right. It's not genuine.
Right.
No authenticity. Now, Darlene said the compassion that is fake always only goes one way also. You know, I am so glad that Tom Homan is back. I was so sad to see this man go because he is a person, like you said, Bill, He's genuine. He has the passion. He loves this country. He's on the same page with Donald Trump probably 99% of the time. But, you know, we look at this, and I want to know, and you know, why we have to ask the question, why are these Democrats in Congress so hell-bent on keeping the borders open, allowing anybody and everybody to come to this country and transform this country? Let's not forget the 2030 agenda. And it's easy to forget that. There was, under Obama, the UN was talking about, look, let's have this thing where, this agreement where there's no migrants, nobody's illegal, basically. You can go from one country to another country. You can travel all over the world. We'll just be travelers. And we're not going to say anything bad about migrants. We're just going to let everybody go where everybody wants to go, because we know it's such a benefit to have migrants from one country to the next. That's what this is about too. It is about the 2030 agenda. It's the UN trying to bring on the one world government.
Well, the UN has already come out and said that this rule that Trump is enforcing at this point, they are very disturbed by it, and they're going to be looking into this because it violates some of their rules. Of course, as far as the UN is concerned, I say, but anyway, yeah. That's just me. Now,
you and most other people.
Where the Democrats are concerned, I think it might be connected to that, what you just mentioned. I wouldn't doubt it, that there are some who are who embrace that mentality. But I think some of them also are looking at voter loyalty and eventual one-party rule. Mm-hmm. But that then, of course, then plays into what you were just talking about. But it's, you know, we know what this is about. It's not a concern for children, because the same people who seem to be so concerned for these quote-unquote children in cages are ready to slaughter children right up until the time they are born, and in some cases even after they're born. So I don't buy any of their concern for children. It's a bunch of hooey.
Now, Carol said, I don't get it how judges from other districts, much less other states, dealing with the situation. If you're in that district, that's where their jurisdiction should be, not some other state or even county. Carol, the way they do it is federal jurisdiction. And the federal courts have jurisdiction over several states at a time. Rosie Beth said if you went to other countries, they'd shoot you if you went illegally. Robin says, and the illegals are still raping and killing Americans. Linda said, still working on that. Rosie Beth said, it's all sad to watch. Kathy McPherson said, exactly, but this should be illegal because they're not U.S. citizens. Lynn said the Democrats seem to be against the very citizens they represent. And Lynn, I guess you have to ask your question, do they really represent you? You know, is that where we are now? Or have we moved away from that with Democrats in Congress and even some rhinos in Congress on the Republican side? Danielle said one party rule is a Marxist communist agenda. And that we know is what the squad's agenda is, the Marxist communist agenda. Robin said these children are innocent and the majority are not with their family when they arrive. One other thing I want to talk about, Bill, and I think that really upset a lot of people over the weekend, is when they were talking about the ICE raids, which again, these people went all through the process. It was determined that they were to be deported. They'd had their day in court and everything else, okay? It's like enforcing the law for anybody.
What a novel concept.
What a novel concept. And so that's what they were doing. Now, there was a protest in a Colorado ICE detention center right outside. And during that protest, some protesters ran over, took down the American flag, put up the Mexico flag, turned the American flag upside down, took the Blue Lives Matter flag or whatever, you know, did some things to that as well. It was, to me, Bill, and what I've always heard in history, that's an act of war in this country.
It's an act of war.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, we're certainly not laying any blame at the feet of the Mexican government for this, but if these people are wanting to flee Mexico, if that's the nation that they came from, if, you know, you're not trying to flee Mexico and come here and make your life as an American, it sounds like you're wanting to bring Mexico with you. And this gets into La Raza and the political aspirations that some of those people have in taking back what they believe is land that should belong to Mexico, or to Mexicans anyway. So it's another another parallel path that takes us to the conclusion that what this is really about is not about children, it's not about human rights and all this other garbage. This is about revolution. That's what it's about. It's about civil war. It's about changing things to conform to their ideals, their mentality, their aspirations philosophically and politically. Raising that flag was an act of war. I would hope that somebody in the state of Colorado, well, there's not much hope for that right now, is there? Considering the executive branch there, but I would hope that someone would take measures to make these people realize you can't do that and get away with it. But I'm not going to hold my breath.
Don't hold your breath. Rosie Beth said it's not about representation anymore. It's about power. And Carmen said Democrats are trying to take our voices away. The radical Democrats certainly are. Amy Shalom said no, they represent their own agenda. Linda said, do you see the church as a cohesive plan concerning all of these issues? Rosie Beth said it's treason. What is being accomplished? Linda said. Nettie said, Randy, why would you? I don't know what that. I can't read the rest. I probably Randy would think one of the two witnesses is Moses. I'm not sure. Maybe there was a misspelling there. And Karma said, if they were proud of their actions, why are they wearing masks? Well, that's true. Amy said it is about rebellion. Most of them are coming here to destroy our country, Robin said. Just look at how many people they have been carrying their own country's flags in their caravans, wanting to come into America, according to Carol Williams. And we've seen that before. Shora Frank said, great word. Christy says taxation without representation. And Linda says it is about change. It is totally about change. It's about transformation, taking God out of America, changing America totally into and changing the world into a one world government. And then he said, might be a witness to something he didn't see Yeshua, so it must be to the law. Then Elijah as witness to the prophecy of Yeshua coming. So,
okay. Well, you know, when Linda asks or is she asking the question, do you see the church has a cohesive plan concerning all of these issues? I guess she's asking a question there. And obviously, no. You know, at large, no, we don't, if you're asking the question. But God's people in the earth are the ones that are supposed to be making the difference. We're not here just to be different. We're supposed to be ones making a difference. And that means on the ground. That means in the here and now, not just living a good life so that we can enjoy the hereafter. We're supposed to be impacting and affecting the world now. In Matthew chapter 11, since somebody brought up Elijah, you know, John is compared to Elijah. He came in the spirit, the power of Elijah. And John's message was, you need to turn back. You're heading the wrong direction. If you keep going down this direction, the end result is destruction. You need to turn back to God. In other words, don't change, return. Go back to where you come from. And this is, in an apples and oranges way, what we're facing today in America. We shouldn't be about changing it to something. We should be about returning it to what it was. Now, of course, that is going to incite the living daylights out of the radicals and the progressives and all, because you want us to return to slavery and the 1950s and Beaver Cleaver and all that. Actually, I would kind of like to go back to the 1950s way of things personally, and I'm not talking about segregation and all that. I'm just talking about civility and morals and things like that. So this is about returning versus changing. You know, I always found it prophetic that when Obama first came on the scene, it was about change. And then in 2012, their motto was forward. And all of those things, and I don't have time to develop here, but those two terms are all about an anti-biblical worldview.
Absolutely.
Because God doesn't call us to change. He calls us to return. He says, I am the Lord, I don't change. So this to me is a very interesting thing. The church or the body of the Messiah, the believers here, we're supposed to make an impact on this world, the here and now. People's lives are supposed to be transformed, if I can use that term, for the better. And that means turning them back to the Creator. So if that is a question, Linda, then no, I don't think the church at large has a cohesive plan, because the church at large is too busy trying to be relevant to the culture as it's being transformed. The church is trying too hard to fit in, to not rock the boat, to not make any waves. We want everybody to like us. If they like us, we're doing it wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Linda said, a wise man I once knew said that we can't be a light to the world if we are like the world. And that's so true. And I think that's probably a good place to end. Now, did you want to talk about your services this Saturday really quickly for those who are?
Well, sure. We've been meeting for about 6 months now in a rented facility. And so this weekend, we are going to have services in our own facility. It's a lot smaller space, and we're scrambling, particularly Brandon, is scrambling around here trying to get things done so we can be ready to go. But my wife and Brandon have said we need to be here for this service this weekend, and so we are. So, and we're going to have a new start time, not 2 p.m. Eastern, but it'll be 11 a.m. Eastern. So if you want to join us on live stream, you can go to our YouTube page, which is Bill Cloud TV. Is that right, Brandon? Okay. Or they can go to our Facebook page, which is Shoresheen Ministries with Bill Cloud, and they can watch it live. Now, if it's not there, it's Brandon's fault, not mine. I'm just
Of course. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But no, so that's
he's covering your face.
That's Brandon right there, by the way.
See, that's what he can do. He can censor you. So
he can. he can make me look all kinds of ways. So.
Alrighty. Well, hopefully people, watch him online, go to Tennessee if you happen to be there. And thank you so much today for all of your comments and all of your questions. We really, really do appreciate it. If you could, please retweet this everywhere, share this with everyone, get the message out there. And until next week, God bless you. We'll see you then. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.